All this recent stuff about pilots seeing weird lights over Oregon kind of got me thinking about this story that's always stuck with me.
Yeah, it happened way back in '59 in Redmond, Oregon, and well, let's just say it's a weird one.
Yeah.
We've got some pretty interesting stuff to look at for this deep dive, like an old news report with interviews from people who saw it, some newer articles that go back and talk about it again, and even like a whole breakdown of it from a UFO casebook website.
Oh, wow.
So let's try to figure out what really went down that night in Redmond and why people are still talking about it almost 75 years later.
I think what makes the Redmond case so interesting is that it's not just some random I saw something weird in the sky story.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of witnesses, like a police officer and even FAA officials. And get this, they even got it on radar.
Really?
It's not every day you get that kind of combo.
Okay, so paint me a picture. It's September 24th, 1959, just before sunrise in Redmond. Our main guy is Robert Dickerson, a Redmond cop on patrol. He's driving along when he spots something strange up there. What did he actually see? Well, if you go by Dickerson's report and this footage, he first saw this bright thing coming down fast, but then all of a sudden it just stopped and hovered about 200 feet up, lighting up the tops of the trees. He watched it for almost 40 minutes.
40 minutes? That's a long time to be looking at something weird. Did he say anything more about what it looked like?
Oh yeah, he did. He said it was glowing in different colors, like switching between green, yellow, red, and blue.
Wow.
And it wasn't just sitting there, it was moving side to side in a way that most planes just can't do. That little detail is what makes the Redmond case stand out from your usual UFO sighting.
Okay, so we've got this brightly colored thing making crazy movements. What happened next?
Dickerson decided to head over to the Redmond airport, probably to get a better look or maybe find someone to back up his story. And at the airport, he met up with a few FAA officials, including a guy named Laverne Wirtz, who also saw this thing hovering over the airfield.
Wait, so now there are multiple people seeing it, including FAA people.
Yeah.
This is getting good.
It is. And it gets even crazier when you hear that they picked up the object on radar at 5:10 a.m.
No way.
And it wasn't just one radar station. They got it in Seattle and Klamath Falls, which are hundreds of miles apart.
Whoa, radar confirmation definitely changes things. What do you think about that? Does having that kind of evidence make the Redmond incident more believable than other UFO sightings?
Totally. Radar data is like having a solid piece of proof that you don't get with just people saying they saw something. It means there was actually something physical up there, something they could track and measure. This isn't just people seeing things, there's actual tech backing it up.
So if it wasn't just people's imaginations, what did the authorities do about it?
Well, the Air Force decided they had to do something. They scrambled 6 F-102 jets from Portland Air Base.
6 jets?
Yeah. That's not your usual response to a weather balloon or mistaking a planet for something else.
I guess not.
And it gets even wilder because they also sent a B-47 bomber and an F-89 fighter that were already in the air to join the chase.
6 jets. A bomber. Sounds like they were taking it pretty seriously.
You bet they were, and it makes you wonder, what did they know that we don't? This whole military response makes you think they were dealing with something they thought was a big deal, even if they tried to downplay it later on.
Okay, so we've got this mystery object showing up on multiple radar systems, and they send out a whole bunch of military planes to check it out. Did the jets ever catch up to this thing?
That's where things get really strange. As the jets got closer, people said the object changed shape, looking more like a mushroom, and started shooting flames out from underneath.
What?
Then it just shot straight up through the clouds, like it vanished into thin air.
So they sent all those jets after it, and nobody saw it again. That's a pretty impressive disappearing act.
It is, and even though it disappeared from sight, it wasn't quite done yet. They tracked it on radar for another 2 hours, moving south of Redmond at different heights. It's almost like it was messing with them. Makes you wonder if this thing was smart, like it knew they were after it and decided to make a run for it.
Yeah, maybe. So they have this crazy chase, and then poof, it's gone. What happened after that?
Well, about a week later, the FAA tried to say it was just Venus.
Venus? Come on. I mean, I know I'm no expert on space, but even I know that planets don't usually zip around the sky changing colors and dodging fighter jets.
Right. It does seem like a pretty weak explanation, especially with everything we just talked about, all those witnesses, the weird movements, the radar stuff, and them sending out all those planes. Venus doesn't usually cause that kind of reaction.
It really makes you think twice about what they're telling us, doesn't it? And this wasn't just some random thing either, right? This Redmond case, it kind of fits into a bigger picture of all these strange things people have been seeing in the sky for years.
Exactly. And for a long time, they just brushed it off as people seeing things wrong or making stuff up. But lately, it seems like the government's changing its tune about these things. It's not so easy for them to just ignore it anymore.
That's true. Remember those videos the Pentagon released a few years back? Those really changed things. It felt like a turning point in how we talk about UFOs, or UAPs as they call them now.
Those videos, along with some recent reports from the Pentagon and even NASA, have forced a more open conversation. They're admitting that there are things in our airspace that we just can't explain, things that can do stuff we don't even understand.
What do you think about this change in how the government's talking about it?
I think it means we're finally moving past all the secrecy and denial that's been around this topic for so long. For years, the official explanations felt like they were dissing people or just didn't make sense, leaving folks feeling like they were hiding something. Now it seems like they're willing to say, hey, we don't know what these things are, but they're real and we need to figure it out.
So are they basically saying aliens might be visiting Earth?
Well, they're not quite saying that, but they are saying that some of these UAPs can fly in ways and do things that are way beyond anything we can do right now. It's like they're saying, we don't know what these things are, but they're real and we need to figure it out.
That's pretty wild. It opens up all sorts of crazy possibilities.
It does. And even if these UAPs turn out to be something other than aliens, it's still a big deal. Are we talking about some super advanced tech from another country, secret government projects they're not telling us about, or something else entirely that we haven't even thought of?
All those possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
And that's what makes this topic so fascinating. It makes us question what we think is possible, what we know about the world, and maybe even where we fit in the whole universe.
Okay, let's bring it back down to Earth for a minute. All this talk about UAPs is really interesting, but what about the people involved? We talked about Robert Dickerson and the other folks in Redmond. Seeing something like that must have really messed with them.
You're totally right. These experiences can change your whole life. Imagine you're Dickerson just driving along on a normal night, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of something you can't explain. It's not something you just forget about.
No kidding. It's not like you can just call it in and say, yeah, I just saw a glowing thing doing impossible stuff over the airport. Can someone come check it out?
Exactly. And then to have people doubt you or even make fun of you, even though you've got other people who saw it in radar to back you up, that's got to be frustrating, to say the least. No wonder so many people who've seen these things don't want to talk about it. They're afraid people won't believe them, or they'll be made fun of, or even lose their jobs.
That's where organizations like MUFON come in, right? They investigate UFO sightings, but they also help out the people who've seen them.
Yep, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and groups like it are super important for collecting info and looking into these sightings. But they also give people a safe place to talk about what they saw without being judged. It's like a support group for folks who've seen things that most people would think are crazy.
I can see how that would be really helpful, especially when you see something so strange and maybe even scary.
These experiences, whether it's UAPs, weird creatures, or other unexplained stuff, can make you feel really alone. Having a group of people who take you seriously and try to understand what you went through can make a huge difference.
Now, I know there are a lot of people out there who don't believe any of this UFO stuff, saying it's just people seeing things wrong or making things up. How do they explain away cases like the one in Redmond, where you've got multiple witnesses, radar data, and even the military getting involved?
Being skeptical is important for any kind of scientific investigation. It makes us question what we think we know, look for other explanations, and not jump to conclusions. And with UFOs, there are definitely some skeptical viewpoints that are worth thinking about. For example, some people argue that most, if not all, sightings can be explained as things like airplanes, satellites, weather balloons, or even stuff in space like planets and meteors.
But what about the radar confirmation? Surely they can't say that was just a weather balloon or a planet.
True, the radar data does make it harder for skeptics to explain things away. They might say that the radar readings were messed up, or that there could be other explanations like weird stuff happening in the atmosphere, or even the equipment malfunctioning.
I guess those things could happen, but it seems like a bit of a stretch to say that everything that happened in Redmond was just a bunch of coincidences and people misinterpreting things.
Right. And that's where things get interesting. For every skeptical explanation, there's usually a counter-argument from folks who believe that some UFO sightings are truly something we can't explain.
It's like this constant back and forth, with both sides using evidence and different ways of looking at things to support their arguments.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes this topic so captivating. It makes us deal with uncertainty, question what we think we know, and consider the possibility that there might be more to reality than we currently understand.
Okay, so we've got this ongoing debate between the skeptics and the believers, But what about the average person who hasn't necessarily seen a UFO themselves? Should we be worried? Excited? Confused?
Honestly, I think it's normal to feel a little bit of all of those things. We're living in a time where there's a lot we don't know about UAPs, but that also means there's a lot of potential for discovering new things. We're on the verge of understanding our place in the universe in a whole new way, and that's both exciting and a little scary.
It's like we're standing at the edge of a giant uncharted territory, not knowing what we'll find there.
I like that analogy, but that feeling of venturing into the unknown, of pushing the limits of what we know, that's what's always driven us to explore and discover new things.
And speaking of exploring, let's go back to the Redmond incident. We talked about how it affected the people who saw it, but this wasn't just a quick flash in the sky. You said it had a lasting impact on the town of Redmond. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. Even though people tried to explain it away, the Redmond UFO incident became part of the town's identity. It's something that people there talk about, remember, and even celebrate. It's become a part of their history and culture.
So it's like a badge of honor for the town. Like, hey, we're the place where something truly weird happened, and we're not afraid to embrace it.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's a reminder that even in a small town, amazing things can happen. And it's sparked a sense of curiosity and wonder that's still alive today.
How does that curiosity and wonder show itself in Redmond?
Well, one of the biggest examples is the Project Blue Book Festival, which was inspired by the McMinnville UFO Fest. It's a yearly event that remembers the Redmond incident and celebrates everything UFO.
Tell me more about this festival. What kind of stuff happens there?
It's a mix of everything. Guest speakers, presentations, movies, a parade. It's a chance for people to get together, share their stories and theories, and learn more about UFOs and other strange stuff.
Sounds like fun, even if you're not a total UFO believer. It's cool that something positive and community-oriented came out of such a strange and unexplained event.
It really shows how powerful these mysteries are. They capture our imaginations and make us question everything we think we know about the world. And it shows that even when we're faced with the unknown, we can find ways to connect, learn, and celebrate our shared sense of wonder.
It's wild how something like the Redmond sighting can have such a big impact on the people who saw it, the whole town, and even on how we think about all this unexplained stuff.
That's what a good mystery can do. It pulls people in, gets them thinking differently, and sometimes even brings them together.
Speaking of bringing people together, the Project Blue Book Festival isn't the only one of its kind, right? There are other UFO festivals out there, aren't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. The McMinnville UFO Fest, the one that inspired Redmond's festival, is actually one of the oldest and biggest UFO festivals in the world. It happens every May in McMinnville, Oregon, and people come from all over the place to check it out.
What makes McMinnville such a big deal in UFO history?
Well, way back in 1950, this couple, Paul and Evelyn Trent, took some pictures of what they said was a UFO flying over their farm near McMinnville. Those pictures got super famous, and some people still think they're some of the best UFO pictures ever taken.
I think I've seen those pictures. They're pretty convincing. Even the skeptics have trouble explaining those away.
That's right. The Trent photos, along with what happened in Redmond and other sightings in the Pacific Northwest, have really made this area a hotspot for UFO stuff. And these festivals are kind of like a celebration of that.
It sounds like these festivals have something for everyone, whether you believe in UFOs, you're just curious, or you just want to hang out with people who are into the same stuff.
Exactly. That's what I like about them. They create a space where people can come together, share their stories, learn from each other, and maybe even question their own beliefs. It's a chance to talk about this stuff in a fun, open-minded way.
You know, thinking about all this UFO stuff really does make you wonder about where we fit in the grand scheme of things, doesn't it? It's both kind of humbling and super exciting.
Totally agree. It reminds us that we're just a small part of something much bigger than ourselves. And there's so much out there that we just don't know yet.
And who knows? Maybe someday we'll have all the answers. Maybe we'll figure out all the secrets of the universe and meet some other intelligent beings out there. Or maybe those answers will always be just out of reach, keeping us searching and exploring.
That's the cool part, right? The journey, the search for knowledge, always trying to understand more.
I think what I'm taking away from all this is that it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to be amazed by things we can't explain. And maybe that sense of wonder is what makes us keep looking up at the sky, asking questions, and pushing the limits of what we think is possible.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And hey, you never know. The next big mystery might be right around the corner, ready to spark our curiosity and take us down a whole new path.
This has been a really awesome deep dive. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and helping us understand this whole thing a little better.
Happy to do it. Remember, Keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never stop wondering.